We're going to have some speakers after Bob Day tonight, so please hang around. But right now we're going to have Bob. He was born in Marysville. He joined the Army and served as an airborne forward observer. He married, had his first 2 sons. Traveled all over the U.S., building communication towers, and settled in East Texas. Remarried, had 4 more sons. Got a lot of boys.
And he became a grandfather today at 3 o'clock for the first time.
3 o'clock today, grandfather, first time. Thank you. He attended American Broadcasting School in Oklahoma City and soon after graduating worked for Clear Channel Radio Network as a producer for the Ron Hayes Show. A single parent of 6 sons, returned to care for his ailing father, and that was former Yuba County Sheriff Bob Day. And he's the host of The Great American Story. This man here, Eddie Luck, will be the next Paul Harvey. Yeah. That's the way I always like to think about it. And he's got some CDs there in the back. There's 19 different stories on it. They're $10 a piece. Mike wants to sell you all he can. Mike himself personally bought 5. So we can give a hand for Bob Day.
Hello everybody, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Hope I do okay. As you can see, I don't have any 3x5 cards, no notes, no teleprompters. I've spoken speaking engagements several times in the past, and the first couple of times I spent a lot of time preparing my speech, and I figured out I'd never look at it. It's just a waste of time. I just deviate from them. I have a pet peeve about that anyway. It really irritates me when we have a politician or a so-called leader get up there and he's supposedly really passionate about a certain issue, but he has to have somebody write down what he thinks on a piece of paper, and then he has to rehearse it and he has to read it to you. That just irritates the hell out of me. Pardon my French. This ain't a church right now. This is a Tea Party meeting. But anyway, so I'm just going to go off the hip. Larry wanted me to do an hour and 15 minutes. I don't know if that's possible. I know I can talk straight for an hour and 15 minutes, but it might not be something anybody wants to hear. I guess some of you probably want to know, probably have some questions in regards to the radio show. And then I'll move on from that to the message that I want to put out there tonight, which I'm very passionate about. In fact, I'm so passionate about it, I did not prepare a speech because I know exactly how I feel about it. And they are not good feelings, I'll tell you that. And hopefully when you leave here tonight, you will not only be inspired, you will be pissed off. That's when things change in America, is when Americans get pissed off. And if you don't like me using the word pissed off, I'm being as nice as I can, because I got to do it online. As you can see by the hat and the boots, when I go to a speaking engagement, I wear this hat and I wear these boots because I get the same feeling walking into the place as I did before I stood in the door of a C-130. All I got to do is look down and remember, okay, no problem. I can do that, I can do this. And the reason that I was standing in the door of the C-130 every doggone time was for the same reason that I'm standing up here tonight. I'm pissed off. Yeah. I was raised a patriot. I was raised, my dad, even when I was a little kid, I remember, running around the backyard and they had these little flags and I'd be waving them. And Dennis Moore, he was one of the detectives over there. I remember one incident we were barbecuing and he goes, "You don't want that, Bob? He's either got a flag on his shirt or he's got one in his hand. I noticed he's got one on the back of his bicycle." My dad says, "Oh, I love that about him. He's always been a flag waver." That's the way I was raised. And ever since I was a little kid, I was taught what the red stripes meant. Now, I don't know if this is accurate. I think it's accurate, but this came from my parents, and this is what it always meant to me. And I've heard some people say that it meant something else. No, I like the way I was taught. My mom and dad have told me, since I can understand what they were saying, every branch of each of their families have been here since before this was the United States of America. We didn't migrate over here in the 1800s or the 1900s. We were here in the 1600s. Some of my dad's family were here before that, the Maidu and the Modoc Indians, right? My family, every root of my family tree has fought in every single military conflict that this country's ever been involved in. Every one of them. And they taught me that the red stripe symbolizes every drop of blood that they spilled on the battlefield. And the reason for it was for the freedom that we have. Most of that freedom's gone. Most of it's gone. And I just realized, freedom of speech is one of them. I just had the freedom to get completely off of where I was going. I was going to talk about my show first, but you guys just go ahead and listen to it, because I'm on a roll. You listen to the show on Saturday, noon to 12, noon to 2, or get online and Google it. You can listen to it, pick up a CD. But one of the points behind my show is what I'm saying. If I wanted to make a lot of money in radio, I'd follow the footsteps of those who have done it. Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin. I'd study it up and I'd be a politician, a political pundit or something like that, My buddy Paul, he's got that pretty much covered, Levin and Hannity, they're doing a great job, and so is Rush. I don't need to do that. There ain't much room for me, but I've always loved the stories, even when I was a little kid, of the Americans, plural. The singular individual people who made this country what it was. And I grew up listening to Paul Harvey, and when Paul Harvey died, I didn't say I want to be Paul Harvey. I don't want to be Paul Harvey. We don't want another Elvis Presley. There was one of them. There should only be that. Steve McQueen. Only one Steve McQueen. I don't want anyone to follow him and try and be another Steve McQueen or John Wayne or Ronald Reagan. Sure, we might want people to be like them or to fill those voids. And that's what I want to do. When Paul Harvey died, he left a huge void. And that was, an empty spot where we don't get to turn on the radio at noon Saturday and hear the news exactly what it is without somebody's opinion, followed up with a story about American greatness anymore. And it came to a point with my second wife that, I was in the news at the time. I was a news anchor at the time, and then things went south for her. I'm not going to go into it because she's on good behavior now. Knock on wood. So I don't want to deface her here, but I became a single parent of 6 sons. One was an infant, 3 were toddlers, and then I had the other 2 that were from my first marriage, and they were going through puberty at the time, and there was no way in God's green earth I was going to leave their raising up to a babysitter. And even if I did with 6 of them, I'd have to make a 6-digit income to pay the doggone babysitter, So I was sitting there thinking one time, it was right after my dad died, so I'm in some, my mind was like a roller coaster. My dad was everything to me, always had been. And if anybody here knew my dad, he was the greatest person on the planet. I still to this day have never known anyone with that kind of integrity. I certainly can't measure up, but anyway, so I'm going through some stuff, and I'm sitting there thinking, how in the world can I make an income at nighttime so I can be here during the day and raise my kids and raise them right, raise them the way that they should be, and still make use of all of the schooling and the experience that I've gotten through the years in radio. I love radio. I've been a radio addict since I was a little kid. I got my first radio as a little transistor radio when I was 5 out of the back of a Spider-Man comic book. And I carried that with me until it wasn't black anymore. It worn off and it was gray, And so I thought, I got to put this together. There's got to be a way, I talked to God, this and that, and then I got the idea, Paul's gone. Paul Harvey's gone. I don't want to do it the way Paul Harvey did it, but I do want to tell the stories of American exceptionalism. People have got to hear this, because if they don't hear the people who made this country the way it was, how unique they were, how exceptional they were, that's just going to be another big old chop out of the bottom of the tree. One of these days this tree's going to fall and people are going to look back and say, what was ever so great about America? I don't know what you're talking about. I can at least do my part, and I can use this and combine it with raising my kids and being here with my kids and making an income, and I got to make it happen. I didn't have any money at the time, thanks to my ex-wife. You know, the day before she left, we were sitting pretty, but so I found we had an old abandoned camp trailer out behind the house. I pulled it out in the front, I stripped it out, and I turned it into a recording studio, and I made my first 5 Great American Stories. I sent them out to different radio stations. I said, I'm not trying to get on the air, I just want your opinion. Every one of them told me, go, 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 do this, you gotta do this. And it worked out pretty well. You know, it's nationally syndicated now. We're on 22 stations around the country. These CDs here are available online. Unfortunately, most of the people that buy them by digital downloads, which don't really pay much, but they're buying them in every single nation on the planet. Outside of America, the most digital downloads by far that are sold in Russia.
Wow.
Which tells you something I've been trying to convince people of for a long time. The media has convinced the American people that we are hated all over the planet. It's not true. It's a lie. Everybody, most of the people on this planet, especially in Russia, who has just recently come out of socialism, communism, Marxism, Leninism, they love the American ideal. They may be pissed off at our government. They might not like what our government's doing, but they love the ideal of being a free people, having the freedom of speech, not having to wait in a cheese line or a bread line or a toilet paper line. They still love John Wayne. Look at Vladimir Putin on horseback with his shirt off. You can't tell me he hasn't seen every John Wayne movie there is. I carry dog on team, you know. Anyway, so that's the story behind the Great American Story, how it got going, why it's going now. And if anybody's got any questions, I'll take questions before I get into the hot topic. Got it pretty much covered? Okay. There's one over here. What do you got?
Your dad was sheriff in Yuba County?
That's right.
What years was he?
12 years. He did 3 terms as the sheriff and retired in 91. The only reason he retired was because the family talked him into it. It took us 2 years to talk him into it because it was really taking a toll on his health. You know, my dad was one of those guys that even though he wouldn't speak about it at home, he could not leave work at work. Okay, he'd bring it home in here and in here. And, you know, when he became, he would get after anybody that called him a cop. He didn't like that term. If you called him a cop, he'd say, hey, no, you don't call me a cop. I'm a peace officer. It's a big difference, you know. And 41 years in law enforcement, never fired a single bullet at a human being. He'd always tell me, because I didn't need to, I know how to talk to him. He changed a lot of lives. He was a great man. But we could see where it was wearing down on him. Those last couple of years, it was wearing down hard on him. And, you know, not only had he been the sheriff for 12 years, he'd been in law enforcement for 41. You know, and before that, in the Air Force, he was in law enforcement for 4 years. So he'd been doing it all of his life. But, you know, what he really wanted to do, he wanted to be a cabinet maker. Never wanted to get in law enforcement. When he got out of the Air Force in 1954, he moved back here because it's where he grew up, or at least most of his childhood, went to high school here and stuff. And he tried his hardest to get a job as a carpenter. The economy was terrible at the time. And he was getting odd jobs here and odd jobs there. And I don't know if you guys remember, if you're leaving Walmart in Linden and you're coming back into Marysville, just as you're coming up that bridge, the East Street Bridge, there's a billboard there. At that time, he lived in a camp trailer, not a mobile home, a camp trailer with my mom and their first baby under that billboard. And John Dower had been offering him a job for the Yuba County Sheriff's Department as a deputy for a long time. And John Dower was a friend of his dad, my grandpa. And my dad would tell me, he's told me the story 100 times. They wouldn't leave it alone. He kept offering. I didn't want to get into law enforcement. He goes, the final straw was Christmas dinner. He had to borrow a bag of beans from a friend, otherwise they wouldn't have eaten. And he said, that's it. The day after Christmas, he got a hold of John Dower, and he said, I'm only going to do it for a little while until I have enough money to open a cabinet shop. And he said, it wasn't long after until I felt obligated to the people around here. He goes, these are my people. I grew up here. And he said, I couldn't get out of it because I felt obligated. And once I got going, I just couldn't stop. I'm helping these people out. And he used to tell me, that's why you don't ever call me a cop. I'm a peace officer. I keep the peace. And he did. And he proved it with his life, you know. I'm proud to be his son. I'll never measure up to him, but I never pass up the chance to brag about him, as you can see. Yes, sir.
How do we find more sheriffs that will support the Constitution, be constitutional sheriffs?
Well, how do you go about to find them? I don't know. But I know they're out there. We still have John Waynes out there. You know, we still have Bob Days out there. It's a matter of finding them. But I think one important thing, now I don't remember the name of the group, but I'm thinking it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a group of law enforcement officers that were going around the United States to educate the sheriffs, not the deputies, but the sheriffs, the county sheriffs, to the fact that they have more authority in their county than anyone does, including the President of the United States. If the President of the United States set foot in Sutter County, the Sutter County Sheriff will still have more authority than that President does when it comes to that county. And one of the big problems we have is sheriffs don't know that. They need to be educated. And I think once, you know, I don't remember the name of that group, and I hope they're still going. Yeah. But it's constitutional. The sheriff has the ultimate authority in that county. Larry?
That was Richard Mack, and he won the Supreme Court decision stating just that the sheriff is the top elected law enforcement authority in every county. And the association is the Constitutional Sheriff's Association formed by Richard Mack.
Right, I remember the name now. I'm glad you remembered it. My brain's a little scattered, as you guys heard. Sometime between 3 and 3:30 today, I became a grandpa for the first time. I'm having a hard time not thinking about it. I wonder how many I'm going to have in the end with 6 sons. 36 of them. Yes, sir.
Yep. Where are you, Michelle, taking care of your family? How young is your youngest child now?
My youngest now is 10. 10, 11, and 12. The other 3 are up and gone. And I just got the 3 little ones, and well, I'll tell you, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. And I'll tell you, yes, ma'am.
Did you tell us what sex the child is, the grandchild?
Boy. Bob number 4. 10 pounds, 3 ounces. He's a big one. You know? And so one of my sons the other day, he goes, man, I think you overloaded on testosterone. Of course, we knew he was going to be a boy because of the ultrasounds, you know. And I knew he'd be big because his dad was, I think, 10 pounds, 6 ounces. And even though I'm not a very big guy, I was 10 pounds, 2 ounces. But it's in the genes, I guess, you know. But I raised my kids the way, well, let's put it, I was going to say the way I should, but that's not clear. To use Hillary Clinton's term, I don't pussyfoot around the issues. You know, they hear a lot of bad stuff at school. They see and hear a lot of bad stuff on TV. And they hear a lot of bad stuff from their friends. It's the times that we live in. So I don't pussyfoot around the issues. I hit them right between the eyes with it, you know. And look, the ancestors of everybody in here has at least one ancestor who died for this country. If not, there was at least somebody there willing to. Yeah. So why soft soap the issue? You know, that's one area that our country's lacking in right now. One reason that we are in the condition we are in is because people want to soft soap it to their kids. Oh, well, don't say that. You might offend somebody. You know, really?
Frankly cares.
Oh, that's not tolerant. You must be more tolerant. That in itself ticks me off. Do you have to tolerate good ice cream? Do you have to tolerate a nice bottle of wine or a nice bottle of beer? Do you have to tolerate skiing, fishing, trout fishing? No, the word tolerate in itself indicates that whatever it is you're talking about is wrong. I tell my kids, no, you don't tolerate wrong stuff. You stand your ground. You're a Christian, and you're an American, and you're not going to take that crap. That's what brought us here. Now, all of you people have taken time out of your lives to stand up for the red, white, and blue, stand up for what America is, what it was, and what we needed to stay being. But a lot of people in this country, and especially a lot of people on the right, will talk about it, but not do anything about it. I'm not saying get a bunch of hand grenades and go down to City Hall. But I'm saying we got to do more than sit around playing cards and talk about how ticked off we are. We got to do something, because that in itself is what brought this nation here. We don't expect the left to sit down. They never have. And they didn't just spring out of the 50s and 60s. We've been dealing with Marxists, well, since Marx was around, but we've been dealing with the communist mindset, the socialist mindset, for as long as we've been a nation. If you look back to the very beginning, even when the original flag was flying, before the red, white, and blue, we were dealing with people who opposed our ideas of a free nation. Always have been. That's why Sam Adams had a soapbox. That's why Patrick Henry gave the speech about give me liberty or give me death. There's always been opposition to the American way. Always. It's nothing new. But there is something that is new since the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's those on our side, those on the right, those who stand for the American way, not doing anything to stop them. They get out there with their signs. They tip cars over. They march on Washington. They march on the Capitol. They raise all holy hell when they're mad about something. And we used to have the excuse, the most common excuse that we had, well, I'm busy working, man. I'm raising kids. I'm out on the farm. I'm working. I come home at, 6 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. I eat dinner. I'm exhausted. I got to go to bed. I don't have time for this. We got time. Thanks to modern technology, we all have at least a little bit of time for it. Even if it's just sitting on your computer writing emails to your congressman or your senator, you have time for it. I guarantee you. Anybody who can tell you, I don't have time to write a letter to my congressman or make a phone call, I would tell them, did you watch a football game Sunday? You see the last episode of your favorite TV show? How long does it take to write a letter? How long does it take to make a phone call? But we need to do even more than that. And there are a lot of people in the right-wing conservative part of America that actually have time to get out physically and go do things and to push back. Because the right, and I'm not indicating you, obviously you people have not laid down and been kicked like dogs. The Tea Party rose up, the IRS tried to stop them, the liberals tried to stop them, Hollywood, the media tried to stop them. You guys are bigger than ever and you're still growing. Or I guess I should say we. But, so you're rocking and rolling, but we got to get everybody out there. And the way we're going to do it is get them pissed off. We got to get them pissed off and make them realize what has happened, because what has happened in America is a lot like cooking a frog, right?
That's right.
If you put a frog if you get hot water and you try to throw a frog in there, he'll bounce right off top of that water. He's gone. Right? But if you put a frog in cold water and then turn on the heat, he'll just sit there and slowly die because he doesn't realize it. It's so gradual, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. I remember when I was a little kid, and I was watching cartoons Saturday morning. This would be back in the early 70s. I think I was probably about 7 years old, probably about 6 years old. They had these little blurbs in between the commercials. And most of them had to do with tolerance, quote-unquote tolerance, and accepting people for who they are, no matter how they are or what they're like. The three normal little stick people come out, little kids on the cartoon blurb. And then this really weird, jacked up one, big giant eyeball, and just weird comes out, wearing weird clothes and all this stuff. And then the narrator comes on and says, accept everyone. no matter who they are or what they're like. That sounds good on the surface, right? But I remember I told my mom, I said, that's not right. And I remember a couple nights before, my dad was talking to me about Adolf Hitler, because I'd watch TV with my dad sometimes, and somehow or another it came up, right? And she goes, what's not right? She goes, you should accept everyone. I said, no. Dude, you're supposed to accept Adolf Hitler? How about Juan Corona? Juan Corona was fresh in my mind at the time because it wasn't that many years before that my dad was responsible for him getting locked up. So it was common conversation around our house because there were always law enforcement officers in our house and they'd talk about it. And she goes, you know what, that's right. And the point is, they did it to us a drop at a time.
Yep.
So gradually that most of America didn't realize what was happening because on the surface it seems good. Accept anybody, tolerate anybody, no matter who they are, no matter what they're like. No. There's a time when you gotta look somebody square dead in the eye and say, that's messed up, dude. But you don't do that crap around me, I'm telling you. Now that you've been warned, it's on you next time. Well, they're not just doing it to you as an individual. They've done it to our entire nation. They're trying to tear down our borders. Well, they have. They've opened up our borders. They've done away with English as our primary language. Not only do they not expect immigrants to assimilate and be American, they find it would be offensive if you told an immigrant to assimilate, because you're not tolerating him. Really? I don't want to speak Spanish. I don't want to speak Farsi. This is America. We speak English here. And you know, I knew a guy whose wife, he and his wife met in a concentration camp somewhere in Germany during World War II. For a long time, he was the head chef out at the golf club out there by the Peachtree Golf Club out by KNYC. And this one married my first wife. They met. She worked over there. They had us over for dinner. And he said one of the most difficult things that him and his wife had to deal with when they came to America was learning English, right? Because American English is there's so much slang and so many of the different words mean different things. It was difficult. And he goes, but it was important to us because we wanted to assimilate out of respect for the nation that offered us freedom. They not only liberated the concentration camp we were in, they offered us our dreams, and we achieved them. And we knew we were going to because of what we'd heard. So we did it out of respect. How many immigrants feel that way anymore? Most of them want to come in here and say, well, I sure as hell hope that you change the signs at DMV so I can understand them because I want a driver's license. And you go into the clinic and they'll have things up on the wall with 20 different languages telling you how to ask somebody for a translator. Think about how much money we'd save nationwide if we quit printing all government documents in 4 or 5 different languages.
That's right.
What are we going to change the street signs? Well, that leads me to something. I got a video, and it's a shocking video. And hopefully Santos was successful in censoring out the bad words. But it's important because, and it's scary. Even though there's a nation between us, there's an ocean between us. The next thing to America is England. If you think about it, culture-wise, we're a lot different. But if you look at all the different nations in the world, England is the next step. They're our next door neighbor. Yeah. They're the ones more like us than anybody else is, at least that I'm aware of. And when you see this video and what's happening there, it's going to scare you. And it's going to make you angry. It's going to make you realize we're that far away from that happening here. And it goes back to what I was saying. Tolerance. I should say the wrong kind of tolerance. Illegal immigration, just putting up with it. Saying, okay, well, we're going to just, you know what? Not all Muslims are bad. A lot of Muslims are really peaceful, loving people. You know? I actually do know one. I'm not saying I trust him. But so far, he's one of the nicest guys I've met. I actually work with him. Great guy. And I have a feeling that he's only a Muslim, like an Irishman is a Catholic, because his family has been for generations and generations. I'm kind of assuming that's because he cusses like a drunken sailor. He does drink. And I saw him carrying a magazine through the shop the other day. I was like, oh, he's not a very good Muslim. But the point I'm making is that people want to say, oh, well, you know, don't be harsh on the Muslims and don't be intolerant and this and that. Well, you know what? I have a problem with that, because if the terrorists were Christians, I would be doing everything in my power to stop them, because I'm a Christian and we don't act that way. Amen. And I don't want people representing my Lord cutting people's heads off. Good thing I noticed the children. And doing the things that they do. You guys all know what they do. I don't have to specify it. If there were groups, especially in mass like this, going out and doing these types of things in the name of Jesus Christ, I'll be the first one on the bandwagon. And I'm going out and I'm telling you what, somebody's drawing back a bloody stump. Right? Well, we don't see that. I've been waiting. I've been waiting since 1999, which was before the World Trade Centers came down, to see a group of Muslims come out and say, stop, you are not doing this anymore, and if we have to take you out, we will take you out. No, I don't see anybody doing that, which makes me wonder, are they just waiting till their population gets up big enough?
Yeah.
And that takes you back to history.
From within.
The first time, and I'm not going to get into specifics, I don't have notes, but I don't need specifics. Look into it. I've read the Quran more than once. First of all, Islam does not mean peace. And that's not a mistake, it's a lie.
Submission.
That's right, exactly. Submission through force is what Islam means. And they try to twist it. Last week, President Obama did it by saying, oh, well, you know, another word for the same thing is salam. No, it isn't. Salam means peace. Islam means submission through force. Two different words. That'd be the same thing as somebody you're talking to somebody who doesn't know English, and you're saying the word ball means the same thing as bar. They're just spelled a little differently. No, it isn't. A ball is something you play with. A bar is something that keeps you in prison. They're two different things. So is the word Islam and the word salam. It's a lie, and it's not a mistake. It's a lie. Right? Now, if you go back to the beginning of Islam, which is, you know, Muhammad, first of all, one of the first things I noticed in reading the Quran was he hated black people with a passion. He called them dogs, right? He said, and he also called them raisin heads. I'm not really sure where that comes from, but raisin heads and dogs. But he said that they're only good for two things: hard labor and slavery. It's basically the same thing, right? In the early 20s, they noticed that there's a division, there's a crack running right down the middle of the strongest nation in human history, America. And it's the division between whites and blacks. And we can capitalize on that. We can exploit that. A whole bunch of Muslims came over here and committed crimes intending to be caught so that they could get into the prison system. They got into the prison system and they found the angry black prisoners, and they slowly over time conditioned them to believe that Muhammad loved them. Muhammad cherished them more than anybody else in the world ever would. Muhammad finds value in you. These white people don't find value in you. Look what they've done. They made slaves out of you, which was also another lie. We didn't make slaves out of them. A lot of white people did use them as slaves, but no one on earth has done as much to stop slavery and racism as white people have. And I'm not completely white, so this isn't a biased thing. I'm purple. I'm Scottish and American Indian, right? This ain't about color, it's about facts. Now I should say, let me rephrase that. I shouldn't have said white people, Americans is what I meant to say. No one has done as much to stop slavery and racism as Americans have in human history. Slavery has existed since day one. It still exists now in their so-called own country of Africa. Boko Haram, going to a school, Take all those little girls, put them in sexual slavery, and kill everybody else. Those aren't Americans doing that. Those are fellow Africans under the name of Islam. And how did they get so powerful and such a large force in those different parts of Africa to where they could do that without a shot being fired at them to defend those little girls and those people in that school? They waited until their population had grown. And they posed as peaceful farmers. Oh, we're just peaceful farmers. We have that now. Oh, we're just store owners. Oh, I love America. Look, I got a 7-Eleven over here. I drive a cab over there. I own a farm. We grow walnuts. Oh, no, I'm not like those people. Number one, why aren't you saying anything to help stop them? They're disgracing your so-called religion. Well, if you're not upset about this, then maybe you don't feel like they're disgracing your religion, which would mean that you at least in part agree with them. Well, I don't agree with what they're doing, and what they're doing is terrible. Well, that only leaves one thing. That, well, maybe you're not willing to do that, and you don't condone that, but deep down inside, you're looking back in your heart, and you're thinking, you know, it would be kind of cool if America was a Muslim nation. Maybe I'll just be one of these peaceful types and do nothing. Let the violent ones take control, and when our numbers are high enough, then we'll come out en masse and we'll tell the Americans this is no longer your country, it's ours. They've done that since Muhammad was walking on this earth. They've done it over and over and over. The Quran teaches about it, teaches how to do it, why it's so important, why it's so effective. And if you look back at the history of Islam, they've done it again and again and again and again. Now, this video I'm about to show you is in the streets of Britain. Notice the buildings in the streets. This isn't some certain part of England or Britain that looks like India. This is a historical part of Britain. They got the cobblestones. They got the old chalet-style buildings, the old storefronts. This is the kind of place where you used to go for a 5-star meal. Or a tourist would go to see what it was like in old-time England. It's a step away from America. It's what's happening here. The only thing that sets us apart, makes it a little different and a lot harder for the Muslims to do it here, the Second Amendment. They know. They know. If we're going to deal with Americans, that's a whole different ball of wax. These people are packing. They ain't afraid to shoot me right between the eyes. And that's one of the reasons why the left is trying so hard to get rid of the Second Amendment. It's not because of what they say. They don't really believe people don't kill people, guns kill people. They don't really believe that. They don't really believe that an M16 got up and walked into Columbine by itself, or that there was some magical spell on the guy that shot up the movie theater that came on him because he had a gun. They don't really believe the things that they're saying. The truth behind why they want to stop the Second Amendment is because they know as long as we have the right to bear arms, they cannot turn us into a European country without borders. They can't do it. And at the end, I'm going to play a story that shows we've shown this and proven this time and time again. It's how we got Texas. It's how we got Texas. When Texas was called Tejas, it actually belonged... Oh, thanks, man. God, I'm dried up here. When Texas was called Tejas, it belonged to Mexico. But it was mostly populated by Americans. And the Americans had money and the Americans had guns. Well, they didn't want it to be taken over by Spain again. They had fought so hard to get it back from Spain that the current president at the time liked having the Americans there, right? He's like, it's cool, as long as those Americans are there, they're crazy, and they're rednecks, but they're all packing. And one thing about them, if you don't threaten an American, he'll be your friend. He'll be the nicest guy in the world. You threaten him, you're dead. So let's keep the Americans in Tejas, right? Well, after that guy went out, a new guy came in. I think it was, if I remember right, what is Santiago? San. And he goes, you know what, up there in Gonzales, Texas, he goes, they got a lot of guns up there. They ain't nothing but Americans. He goes, I ain't liking this at all, man. He goes, I got socialist plans for Mexico. I ain't going to work out too well with those Americans up there in Tejas. They even have a cannon. They didn't even have a cannon. He told his forces, go up there and take it. Why don't you go up there and take it? The fight was on. It was bloody too. It resulted in 2 fights at the Alamo, and it resulted in us owning Texas. You know, same thing goes back for the United States. You know, the United States didn't become the United States. We didn't revolt against England because of the issues like taxation without representation, freedom of religion. Those aren't the reasons we revolted or that the fight started between us and Britain. They were issues. They were weighty issues that we cared about. They were issues that caused us to leave England and a lot of the other places that we came from, Scotland and Ireland and Portugal and Spain, because they lived in socialist or monarchy type governments. They had freedom here. Yes, those were issues. The fight started when the government said, go take their guns. That's when the fight started. That's one thing about Americans. You take their guns, or you try to take their guns, you're going to have a mess. That's why the left is trying to get rid of our Second Amendment, or at least whittle it down to where only the wealthy and powerful will have guns, because they want to do away with our borders. They want to make us like every other European country.
That's right.
No borders, no language. Anybody you want. You got 1 million languages here, and we're just going to appease all of you. Okay, we'll make all of our signs have 15 languages on it because we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want anyone to think we're intolerant. You know what? If a person wants to call me intolerant, that's just fine. If you want to call me a hater, that's fine. I don't actually hate anybody except for someone who's trying to kill me or my kids. But I don't care. And you know one thing that we've forgotten as Americans? That old saying that we all said when we were kids. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Call me what you want. I mean, there's one thing you don't want to call me. I'm not going to say it because there's children here. But all the rest of them are going to bounce off. They don't actually physically hurt me. And if that's what you think, you're kind of messed up, so I ain't going to waste my time on you anyway. But I'm not afraid of words. I'm afraid of losing my freedom. I'm afraid of my kids. And now my little grandchild that I have, I'm afraid when I think about what's the world going to be like. If we keep being pathetic and saying, oh, I'm afraid to be called a word. I'm afraid to be called intolerant. I'm afraid to be called this or that or the other thing. Oh, I don't want to be called angry. That's one of the biggest ones. If you get passionate about something, the left calls you angry. Okay? Yeah, I'm angry. I'm angry as hell. I am. And I'm passionate about it. So, quit making me angry. You know? Quit trying to take my land and turn it into the Soviet Union. I don't want to stand in a cheese line. And, like I started off on all this, I can answer all of those. Well, why do you think this? Why do you think that? Why are you willing to go out and die for this country? Why are you Well, point to the right here. Because my family, since the 1600s and probably earlier than that, has spilled a lot of blood for this country. We fought in every single military conflict in our country's history, and they didn't do it because they were drafted. They didn't do it because, like in the Soviet Union, they were forced to do military service 2 years when they were 18 years old. As far as I know, none of them were drafted. Even my relatives that fought in Vietnam. Every one of them that I'm aware of enlisted. Because not only do Americans fight for our own freedom and are willing to die for our own freedom, when we see somebody else's freedom threatened, we're willing to jump out there and save theirs too. That's how much freedom means to us. Now, Santos, if you're ready, I want you to start this video. And this is Britain. Even though we have an ocean between us, when it comes to the eyes of the rest of the world, that's the next best thing to America. After they're done here, it's us. And then you can think about how you would feel if this was D Street or Plumas Street. D Street in Marysville or Plumas Street in Yuba City. When you're watching this video, imagine how you would feel if it was here. Ready?
Had a bit of hostility, but we're marching through. This is a British town, and we're proud to be British. Like you've got people scared. You don't have us scared. No. You think you can take over town and tell us that it's your country? You've taken over. Not for long. See this cross? This won't prevail. This is the British town. I'm coming where I live. I've got where I live.
But if you had a Muslim symbol, you wouldn't say anything. Thank you for stopping. Can you give us a little idea of what just happened?
So we were walking through, we're not getting things thrown at us. We were walking through Bury Park High Street campaigning. We've got Christian crosses with us, and we just literally got mobbed. Muslims came out from every angle. Muslims told us that they've taken our country, we're not welcome, it's not a Christian country. They've taken over and we need to leave. They were threatening violence. People tried to attack me, people threatened to attack Paul Goldie, people tried to attack our activists, they're throwing things. This is a British town. This is Britain. This is a Christian country. I'm British, these activists are British, so we will walk through these streets. We have every right to, without being threatened.
The English people, as you can see there, that van there, they're very supportive, the local English.
There are very few of them here, but the ones that are here, they have been entirely supportive. They were thanking us for coming.
And what can you tell us about what some of the Muslims have been saying?
They said they've taken over, they said this is no longer ours, it's no longer Britain, that they will drive us British people out and take over our country. They said it's not a Christian country, it's now an Islamic country. They said that I should cover up. Their women are covered up there, some of them are hurling abuse. You know, it's just, it doesn't resemble Britain anymore, and you can just see that the very small minority of British people left in this town are just in despair. You can see that today.
Listen, don't be dirty. I'm sorry.
Don't come over and threaten us, right? This isn't your town. It's our town. It's a
Yeah. Reject the false prophet, Muhammad, and follow the true Saviour of the world, Jesus Christ our Lord. No, I'm not shutting up. Okay? No. No. Right, we've just walked through Bury Park giving out newspapers. As you can see, we've got like 20-25 activists with us today. And we walked down the high street and we walked back. That was our intentions. And we have been subjected to an enormous amount of hostility from the local Muslims. Lots of support from the local English, and I can see why. But some of the things that these Muslims were saying, that they're going to take over this country, they've already taken over this town, and all sorts of threats, calling Jada expletives, etc. So things like this, operations like this have to be done. They have to be done. We have to show these people that this is still England, this is still Britain, this is still our country, and we have had enough of being treated like second-class citizens in our own towns.
Now you see what I mean? What if that was Plymouth Street? What if it was D Street? There's a lot of them here waiting for that opportunity. They're waiting for the numbers to get up. They've done it time and time again since the 600s, 670 something, whatever it was when Muhammad left, supposedly. And they've done it time and time again. It's a fact, historical fact. And one thing that makes it bad here is the same thing that made it happen in Britain. They have, for lack of better terms, the liberal anti-British side that says, we want this universal, this global culture. Just like that planet on Star Trek. Oh yeah, utopia, everybody's at peace, we're all different, look how we live. And at the end they got their real intentions come out. They got Captain Kirk and Spock strung up like deer getting ready to skin them. You know, but what more would they want than the United States? This is the greatest nation in the history of mankind. They can't just walk in here and take it. The reason that it's taken them longer here is because of the Second Amendment. We cannot let our Second Amendment rights be stepped on. I don't care who it is. People need to get out there. This election is probably the most important. It's not probably. It is the most important election in my lifetime.
Yes.
You know, I'm 51 years old. I still got a long time to go, but, you know, because of my dad, when I was a little kid, I'd sit and watch news with my dad, so I wasn't ignorant about things until I grew up. I was aware of what was going on when I was a kid. I remember sitting on my Uncle David's lap watching the moon landing. I remember watching, I remember when President Nixon came into office. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. But I'm not ignorant to it. And that's the way I raise my kids, and that's how we all have to raise our kids. And for those of you who have grandkids, maybe your kids aren't teaching them, you're a grandparent. If your kids ain't doing it, you got to do it. And we can't listen to the media anymore. The media is a bunch of, liars. I hate to say it. I don't want to go after anyone, but I've been really appalled at Fox News during this campaign. I really have. And now I'm left thinking, where do I go now? I can't just go home and turn on Channel 39 and hear the news anymore and think it's fair and balanced, because a lot of it ain't. I still do trust a few of the people on there.
You go to Agenda 21 Radio.
There you go, Agenda 21 Radio. And then if that brings you down too far, then turn on the Great American Story Saturday. You got a question back here?
The difference between Britain and America, and I've been in Britain when I was in the Air Force, they took their guns away from them.
That's right.
They don't have any defense like we have.
Right.
And God forbid if we ever lose our guns, we're in trouble.
That's why that was able to happen. I'm glad you brought it up. That's why it happened in Britain first.
Yeah.
Because they don't have guns.
They don't have guns.
And, I told you my dad was in law enforcement in the Air Force. Most of the 4 years he was in the Air Force, he was in England and Casablanca, Africa, teaching the English police officers, the bobbies, how to control crowds without guns. That's how long it's been since they had guns. There are a handful of British police who have guns, but they're not the ones that respond to stuff like that. You remember, I think it was about a year ago, maybe more, when there was a British soldier, and he was home on leave, and he's walking down the street in England. He got attacked by a Muslim with an axe, with a hatchet and a knife, and he chopped him up right there in front of a crowd of about 200 people, and if you look at the footage, you see cops standing in the background. They couldn't do anything. They weren't armed, and didn't have the guts to take a knife and an axe without a gun, which I think is pathetic. They should have all been punished and fired. Yeah, that's right. I know, at least as far as Americans like we are, we would be willing to get hit with that axe to save somebody else. We'll give it a shot. We've done it throughout our history. People say, oh, well, we don't want to get involved in nation building. No, I don't want to get involved in nation building, and I don't want to be the nation's police officers either. But Americans can't turn away when innocent lives are being massacred. Now, one more thing, and I'm not going to go too far into detail with it because I forgot my glasses, and so most of it's a gray blur and my arms aren't long enough. But just to stand up, I mean, just for something that stands up to what I'm telling you about, it has happened. Most people know nothing about this. I don't think anyone here is old enough to actually have it fresh in their memory. Well, I know they're not, but how many people have heard of the Armenian genocide?
Yeah.
Now, you guys are a more educated crowd than most. During World War I, there were 2 million Armenians who lived in Armenia. 2 million. The Muslims knew World War I's a great distraction. All of the world powers are fighting each other right now. Who's looking at us? Who's looking at Armenia, for crying out loud? But you know, the Armenians had been there for 3,000 years. We've been here for less than 300. We haven't made it 300 yet. They were there for 3,000 years. The Muslims saw World War I as a great distraction. There were 2 million Armenians there. They killed 1.5 million. Then, including those who starved, living out in the woods because they ran for their lives, by the time World War I was over, there were 40,000 Armenians left. That's the goal of Islam. Submission through force. They don't just walk in like the Nazi Party did in Poland. They populate the country. A little bit here, a little bit there, just like the heat coming up on that frog. And when they have the numbers, and like in this case, a distraction, the world's not going to pay attention to us. They're going to pay attention to Adolf Hitler in the United States and Winston Churchill and all these people, and the big powers in the world. They're going to be paying attention to them. They're going to be looking over there. It's time. It's time to rise up. And there's a reason they called it genocide. They meant to wipe out every doggone one of them. They almost all but did. And that's their goal. And this is how they start out. And that's one of the steps. They get the population up, and then they tell you, no, this ain't your country anymore. It's mine. It's mine. And they get a lot of their ways, because how many people are willing to do the things that they do? Not many. That's right. Because they want the Muslim vote. They bend over backwards for the illegal aliens, no matter what country they're from a lot of them, most of them come across the southern border. They want that vote. You know what? How about all of you, next time you hear somebody argue in defense of leaving the border open, tell them, okay, that's fine if you believe that. When you go home, take the doors off your house. You know, and next time I'm hungry, I'm coming in your house. I'm getting something to eat. If you stop me, I'm going to call you intolerant. I'm going to call you a racist. I'm going to call you a hater. It's absolutely stupid. Their arguments are absolutely stupid. And they're ignorant. But there are too many people in this country that don't want to be called a bad word. So they say, oh, well, I kind of understand what they're saying. I want to be a nice guy. But you know what? I don't care about Mr. Nice Guy. There ain't no more Mr. Nice Guy. Look where we're at right now. It's time to quit being nice.
Well, it's Martin Luther King used to yell, I want my country back, I want my country back. That's where I'm going.
Amen. Amen to that. And on that note, I'm going to give it over to Paul or whoever's next, because I think if I keep going, I'm just going to be repeating myself. Thanks for having me.